Have you ever heard the sound of freedom? Have you ever heard the sound of freedom?
You are listening to The Flip Side with Noah Filipiak, connecting the reality of the gospel to the grit of life. You can support the podcast at patreon.com/Noah Filipiak or at noahfilipiak.com/give.
What is up? Welcome to episode 55 of the Flip Side podcast. Today is an amazing day. It is a special day. It is a day that our podcast is being co-hosted with the one, the only, Chase Stancle. Oh, man. The live studio audience loves you, Chase. They are eating this up. Chase, man, welcome to the Flip Side. Thanks for being here, and tell the Flip Side Nation a little bit about yourself.
Hey, what's up, Flip Side Nation? My name, like Noah said, is Chase Stancle. I am 36 years old, married for almost 16 years. My wife and I will celebrate our 16th anniversary in October. And we also have 4 children and a Great Dane. I get to serve as a lead pastor of Unison Christian Church. And I am also a musician, singer, songwriter, and loving life.
All right. Nice. So Chase is not a guest. He is
not a guest.
Not a guest. See, Chase, your family. See that? You
See,
like what I did
right?
there? See?
Yes, I'm not, because I get to just like go in the refrigerator.
That's right.
And
go in the refrigerator. You can walk around in your underwear.
No.
See,
I don't know about that.
This is co-host life. Co-host, the first ever co-host on the Flip Side.
Let's go.
So throughout the 55 episodes of the Flip Side, we had some listeners write in and demanded that the audience have a name. So that the audience, have a nickname, have name. And so we did a little survey, did some brainstorming, and often when I introduce an episode, I will welcome the audience as the Flipoponemi.
Come on, Flipoponemi.
Flipoponemi.
Let's go, Flipoponemi. So wait, would one listener be a Flipopotamus?
Yes. One listener would be a Flipopotamus. So today I have my Ninja Turtle coffee mug, as you can see, that the listeners can't see. But I have a mug, a coffee mug. I should have used it, and it says on the mug, "I am a Flipopotamus," and it's a hippo holding up a sign. So if any listeners want that mug, I'll explain how to get it in a minute. But what I'm saying is, if you continue co-hosting with me, we're going to need to modify. We're going to need to come up with the name for the Flipoponemi and the I have got nothing for the Chase Stancle lights. So you got anything?
No. Like I feel like I like Flipoponemi. So like, what you talking about? Like the listeners specifically of our podcast.
Of this podcast.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. We're good. I like Flipoponemi.
So
look, that's great.
We have some creative listeners, and if any come up with a nickname that incorporates Chase into this, you're welcome to let us know. You can email the show podcast@beyondthebattle.net. And if you're wondering why I have a co-host now, I got tired of listening to myself. I got tired of hearing myself talk.
Oh,
and
but your voice is so sultry.
This morning, so I have a cold. I do not have COVID.
You're good.
I do have a cold. I am sucking on a cough drop as I record, so that is not a good idea. Hopefully my cough drop will remain quiet in my mouth. Last night I slept with cough drops in my mouth overnight.
Yes.
So that I could breathe. And so
yes. Okay, wait. So I know that that's not the safest thing on the planet to do, but I honestly have done that, and it really does help. Even like as a singer, it helps like to be able to breathe at night. So
you have to. So my wife is very safety conscious, and she tells me not to do it, and I say, you know what? I'm an 8 on the Enneagram. I do whatever I please. And my wife is a 1 on the Enneagram, so she follows the rules.
She does what the rules say.
She's very high as a 6 as well. Lots of 6 in my wife. So the idea of sleeping with cough drops, in her mind, I will choke and die. And for me, it is the only efficient way of breathing at night. And so as a result of this, I have a nice deep bass growly gravel voice this morning. So I'm ready.
He has the Barry White happening.
The Barry White morning show here with Chase and Noah this morning. And here's the thing. Chase has a problem. He is a morning person. So this is the thing. He is one of those people, Flipsiders, Flip-a-Ponami. He is one of those people. He is a morning person. Chase enjoys the morning. He is high energy. He gets up early. I am not one of those people.
Why is that a problem? But wait, why is that a problem, though?
Because I am envious of this in you, and when I see you, I say, what is wrong with that guy? Because in the morning, I am walking around like a zombie, sleepwalking, and pretty much don't talk to me before maybe 10 a.m. 10 a.m. might be about when the sun starts to come out. So it is out of envy. It is out of looking at you, sort of like you have superpowers that you are able to get up and be spry and joyful.
Okay, wait.
That is not something I bring to the table.
Are you a night person though? I don't know if we've ever talked about that in our year plus friendship. I don't know that we've talked about. Are you a night person?
I am naturally a night person. Yes. But
okay. Well, so you all though. So like in terms of being envious, like around 9:30, my body really starts to shut down. Like my wife will be the first to tell you. Like I am when we first got married, I was like that angry, sleepy person, like super like sharp with my words, no filter. Like if it isn't a yes or no question, don't ask it after 9:30. And so like I have this very steep decline around 9:30 where like I'm good for nothing. So I mean we're good. It works out. We're balanced. We're balanced.
Well, the problem is my wife is a teacher, and so for 9 months out of the year we are on school teacher schedule. And now we have children, so naturally we're on a school schedule anyway. But prior to having children, we were on the school schedule, and so we have to, and my wife is also a night person, so that works to our favor that we both have the same ailment, but we have to go to bed early against our will and have to wake up early against our will. So that's
my gosh.
That's our family. And also, as I mentioned, drinking from my Ninja Turtle mug that no one else can see. I don't know if you knew this, Chase, but we have an official real, as in I'm wearing the hat today, my Angry Brew hat. We have an official sponsor on the flip side. So shout out to Angry Brew Coffee, which I am drinking this morning. And Angry Brew helps me in the morning not be quite as angry. See that? See there? And so listeners know.
It takes care of the anger for you, so you don't have to be angry.
Exactly.
Got it. It absorbs the anger.
Absorbs the anger, yes. And so shout out to Angry Brew. Very thankful for the sponsorship, and listeners can get 10% off angrybrew.com using the promo code FLIP. So that's pretty great. Now, Chase, the sense I get as we hang out is I'm a bit more of a coffee person than you. Would you say that is? Do you drink coffee? How much coffee do you drink?
So, let me. So
what are your coffee habits? Let's talk about your coffee habits.
Okay, so I do like coffee. My favorite thing about coffee is the smell of coffee, because my parents were like super, super coffee drinkers when I was a kid. Like they would have coffee brewing literally all day.
Okay.
So like it was not just the best part of waking up. It was the best part of waking up, the best part of coming home from school, the best part of going to bed was the smell of coffee. But but in terms of like how much coffee I drink, I probably will have like a cup, a cup a day. Sometimes I'll have two. But I will say that it's more so in the afternoon and evening, right? I'm a morning person, so I don't really need it in the morning, but like around 2:00, like I would do really well in a part of the world where they have siestas, because that would be my jam. Okay.
Nice.
Go to sleep in the middle of the day. But yeah, so I drink coffee like in the middle of the day.
My childhood coffee memory is during church when I was not paying attention during the service, doodling or something, and my parents would lean over and whisper into my ear that I needed to pay attention to the service. And I just remember that stale coffee breath smell during church. So I sense that
my gosh,
you may have experienced the same.
Yes. And there, honestly, so while I said that I enjoy the smell of coffee, there are things that I enjoy more than the smell of coffee breath.
Coffee breath is not the best.
Not my favorite.
It is, like mint smells good and mint breath smells good. Coffee smells good, but coffee breath.
It doesn't translate. It doesn't translate. No.
Yes.
Not at all. Too many bacteria.
So there is one thing that I thought maybe our Flip-A-Ponami could help out with this morning. One of our goals on the flip side is to make the world a better place. And Chase, you and I are good friends, so we meet together weekly to pray for each other, to talk about life. And so I feel like I can kind of confront you on certain things. Obviously, privately, with only us and the Flip-A-Ponami listening.
Wait, that's not private, bro. But I'm good with
it. I mean, it's all family. It's all family.
Yeah. We're family.
So one thing we got to work on, you and I, and the flip side audience is going to help with this, I think. We got to up your game. I would never, as a friend, talk to you about this privately to be insulting or ungrateful. But because we're doing a podcast together, I think it's time that I point to the elephant in the room. At your church, which I visit to pray with you, you serve. You have the Keurig, the K cup, which is a nice way to have a quick cup of coffee, and
right.
Your brand of K cup is Folgers. So this is where we gotta talk about this.
Whoa, wait, wait, wait. No. That is not my brand. Okay, so this is a shared office, bro. Like
let's hear an excuse.
Kind of people.
Let's hear the rationalization.
Okay? My brand is called Green Mountain.
Okay.
The dark roast specifically.
All right.
And apparently I need to check out Angry Roast.
Angry Brew. I don't think Angry Brew has K cups. I don't think they're at the K cup production level.
But you can put the grounds in the little reusable one.
That's above me, man. I've never.
Okay, all right, okay.
Okay,
go ahead. Question me on the Folgers though, because then we can talk about it.
So on this show, I do a bit at the end called Noah's Rant, and I rant about something in society that is wrong. Today, I will be ranting on Capri Sun and the little angled straw and the mess that it always makes. That's a little sneak peek on the rant for today. So I've done a rant before about Folgers coffee and just how hideous it is. How it basically is like dirt. If it's like dirt ground up, into a cup, and just I've done a whole. I won't do the rant here. I'm not in a rant mode right now. I'm in my good Christian.
I don't know, bro.
I don't
know.
But I get it. Here's the thing, Chase. Some people are poor and they don't have a lot of money, and so they have to buy Folgers. I'm not going to judge somebody that has.
So
what I thought was,
bro, I don't know, bro. I don't
that-
know. I don't know. You're going too far because Folgers, like, there's a whole saying. The best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup.
that
Bruh, I don't know.
Don't believe
That's the
everything.
thing.
Don't believe everything you hear on TV. Don't believe everything you hear on TV.
I don't know. It's a whole slogan.
So
For a reason.
I thought maybe we could do a fundraiser with the Flip-A-Potami where the Flipside audience, if you send in donations, we'll and you earmark it towards Unison Christian Church's K-Cup Fund.
Oh my gosh! No.
We will.
Okay,
I'll
that's
give
gonna
that.
be turned into donuts. By the way, y'all. Like, okay.
No, if someone designates a fund, you legally have. If someone wants a statue built of themselves, you legally have to do it. So
that's true. See,
so
then you getting all your little nonprofit rules.
Nonprofit rules. So what I would like, since Angry Brew doesn't make K-Cups, Flip-A-Potami, let's raise some money for Starbucks.
Oh my gosh.
Starbucks K-Cups that we can have in the Unison office. We could even label the drawer.
Starbucks.
We could even label the drawer.
Okay.
Noah's drawer. I could have my own drawer.
Starbucks, bro. No, you're talking about something that tastes like dirt.
Oh, don't even start, Chase.
Starbucks is coal.
So
ground
good.
up.
So good.
It is coal.
So
charcoal. Good. Ground up and served to you second hand. Like, it's not even coffee.
Nothing you say about Starbucks right now will even hurt my feelings, because it's like you're describing the sun as being hot and warm and yellow. Yes. Whatever you say about the sun, the sun
Angry Brew.
It's a beautiful.
We need you. We need Angry Brew. We need you to make some K-Cups so we can deliver our brother.
All right. Now, here's a real question. Do you think it's not a real question? But do you think? I think coffee is like the coffee addiction outside of your parents as a sample size. At least I think I think coffee is more of a white person addiction than a black person addiction. What do you think, culturally speaking? Culturally.
Ooh, you know what? I actually would agree. Yeah, I'd agree. So, because it's not really a thing like, well, let me back up. So I'd say growing up, it wasn't as much of a thing in Black community. I'd say now, I see just as many Black folks with, dedicated coffee mugs and, and all, like, I have friends, Black friends who like have more than just a Keurig. They have like straight up espresso machines in their house. So No, I feel like, look, I know our conversation today is about gentrification.
That's all part of it, isn't it?
Some part of it, okay? Starbucks is a part of it. They tricked us into believing that that's what we needed,
and
bro.
then they hooked you. Now you're hooked.
They hooked even the Blacks.
This is like the war on drugs all over again, man.
Yes. Yeah. No, yeah. I would say that there's definitely been a cultural shift even among Blacks as it relates to coffee. So that's funny though that you would even see that.
You are so you're a multi-racial, multi-ethnic, multicultural. Those words are all kind of synonymous to me. Multi-ethnic church. Yep. I'm planting a multi-ethnic church. So the real question is, do you serve coffee on Sunday mornings at church?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very good. So this was back in 2012, I did a sabbatical. So I was, church planted in Lansing and was pastoring. So I took a full summer sabbatical, and every Sunday I visited a different church in town in Lansing. And I think throughout my 11 or 12 Sundays, I went to 3 churches that were African-American churches, not multi-ethnic, but, full-on Black churches. And I can tell you this, so word to the wise, of the 12 churches I visited, the 9 that served coffee were white churches. And the 3 that did not serve coffee We're black churches.
Don't you bring your coffee into this sanctuary. What you talking about? Some coffee at a black church. Okay, you ain't bring no pancakes and eggs in here with you. Okay, the coffee is what you drink at home. Okay, you'll bring that at the black church. Okay, you're not gonna need it at a black church anyway, man. Our music is so hype.
That's right. That's right. Oh man.
So you're good. You're good. Being raised in a black church is why I'm a morning person.
Dude, if white people show up to church and there's no coffee, they're out of there. That's why white people don't go to black churches. They show up and there's no coffee.
And that's why, as a multi-ethnic church, we need coffee.
That's right. That's right.
So it's a part of just making sure that we all feel home.
We got to provide for the drug needs of the
visitors
who are coming. Man. We have a little smorgasbord.
Look, and don't let us have like a celebratory weekend, man. We have coffee, we got cookies, beignets.
Oh man.
Yes.
All right. So, as we talked about coffee and the culture of coffee that it is, you mentioned gentrification. You and I had a conversation, just a casual conversation within the last month or two about gentrification. It's happening in Grand Rapids. I'm gonna, and you had some really insightful things to say about it. So I want to take some time together to talk about it. First, I'll say this: if you ever, listeners, if you ever want to sound smart, like really smart, just smarter than anybody in the room, just use the word gentrification. Just say it randomly. Most people won't know what it means anyway. So if people are talking about the weather, just say gentrification, and people will think you're really smart. Also,
you better be careful with that, though, Flippopotamus. Look, Flippopotami, you better be careful with that.
We're going to educate you soon.
Because the one person will know. The one person in the room will know, and then they'll look at you like, what? Okay. How you going to use gentrification talking about sweet potato pie?
It will also, the second thing it will do is it will make you appear extremely woke if you use the word gentrification. That is your woke card, is the ability to use the word gentrification in a conversation. And so before we get to gentrification, let us talk quickly about, see, I'm losing my voice because I have a cold. And I will say this, I did have COVID back in March or so, and I did a whole podcast episode not knowing that I had COVID. I had COVID during the episode.
Did you have to mute when you were coughing?
I was interviewing somebody and I kept having to mute myself, and I was coughing into my elbow. I know this isn't COVID because my wife got tested because she's a teacher and she had to because she has it too, not COVID. And I got it from a doctor friend of mine. We were having lunch and he goes, "Oh yeah, sorry if I get you sick today. I just picked up this cold and it's not COVID."
Okay, bruh, wait a minute. Wait. Doctor
gave me this cold. Dead serious. Yeah.
All right, we're not going. That's a whole nother episode. We're talking about gentrification today, but we won't have to talk about that as another episode, bro.
So
that might be my rant.
So before I started losing my voice a minute ago, I think the word woke 3 years ago, I think was a good word. Woke is I felt. I legit identified with the word back in 2008. I read the book Divided by Faith, and it woke me up. I awokened. I woke up to racial injustice all around me. Now I do use the term a bit, I think I'm using the word right, facetiously, a bit tongue-in-cheek. Woke now, I think, has kind of a much larger cultural connotation for white people of sort of a snooty, I'm the woke one in the room, and all those sorts of things. So when I say woke now, I kind of I see it as does that make sense? Do you see the word that way, or how do you see that word?
So you know what? So from a black person's perspective, right? Much of what, especially Western culture, and then speaking, are probably more hyper focused in terms of white culture, is a very cerebral culture, like very in your head. The more you know, knowledge is respected, that kind of stuff. And it's not so. Generally speaking, there may be a lot of woke white folks that are only cerebrally woke, but relationally, socially, emotionally, they're not at all. They're still very, very distant. And so all of the most minority cultures tend to kind of be much more, emotive and much more communal. And so, when I think about the word woke, I think there are really two different spaces. There is this individual who has a bunch of, like, they can use the word gentrification, but they have no community in which that actually has any, I guess, space of connectedness in their life. It doesn't go anywhere deeper than their use of the word. And then there are folks who actually allow themselves to be marinated in cultures that are separate from theirs, and then they allow themselves to be fully woke. So they're not just like they're not sleepwalking. That's what my wife and I will laugh about that. Like, they think they woke, but they just sleepwalking.
Yeah, that's a good metaphor. No, and that's what I'm getting at as in these kind of white circles and these white conversations. I think it's so for one, let me say it's okay if you're at the point of your journey where you're in the reading stage and the education stage and the conversation stage. That's the beginning of the journey, but there's this feeling that can come to a white person that now that I've read Ibram X. Kendi, or now that I bought a Black Lives Matter T-shirt or something, that I'm woke in the sense that, for one, I think it for some white folks it can give the feeling like I'm no longer part of the problem. Like I'm no longer, I'm different. I'm no longer contributing to. I don't have to work on my own stuff anymore because now I'm an okay. My journey's. You just started your journey and you feel like your journey's over because you know a few things. But what you learn as you go on is this rabbit hole really never stops. And the more work you do in this world of, anti-racism or whatever you want to call it, you go, wow, the problem is worse than I ever thought it was. And the more I read about it and the more conversations I have, the worse I realize the problem is. And the more complicated and complex it is, and the more work I see that I have to do, within myself. So,
yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna just read the internet definition of gentrification from the Google machine, and it
Come
says,
on,
Google machine, the process whereby the character of a poor urban area is changed by wealthier people moving in, improving housing, and attracting new businesses, typically displacing current inhabitants in the process. And so essentially, gentrification, that sums it up in a way where you have a part of town, part of the city, the urban area that has been economically depressed for a long time. And in an economically depressed area, the cost of living is going to be lower. So it's more affordable to rent houses in that area. And then multiple ways, but usually orchestrated by the city itself to sort of try to clean up an area of town in partnership with some large developers, usually large developers that are owned by white people. And I'm no expert on this, and Chase, fill in all the gaps that I'm missing. But gentrification, when you see it happening, it usually involves big condos on the main strip. So the main city street, the business street, that you'll see large, brand new condos or apartments that are luxury, that are luxury condos, and they're meant to attract young white millennials, young business people to that area. And then underneath the condo, in the storefront that they build brand new, will be sort of these I don't know, I'm just going to use some words. I don't even know what all these words mean, so just take them with a grain of salt, but sort of hipster kind of shops and restaurants. And I've heard it said before, it's no, I won't even say that. It might be kind of offensive towards, but
hey, don't say it, bro.
No, it'd be offensive to a certain style that white people, some white people wear, and it's fine. It's not a bad style. It was just something a black friend of mine said, and I was like, oh, that makes sense. But then what you have is you'll go through this part of town, and you'll see all the shops on the main strip, and they'll literally just be filled with white people, and usually young, trendy white people. And then right behind the shops are all the housing, and the housing is filled predominantly with people of color and predominantly African American, depending on the part of the city you're in.
Yeah.
And so, what is, and I'll turn this over to you, Chase, fill in what I missed on what gentrification is, and then tell us what is the problem with it. Why are people upset about gentrification? Isn't this a good thing to sort of clean up this part of town, so to speak, quote unquote?
Okay, so because we live in an incredibly cerebral culture. I feel like we like to throw around words. I think gentrification is it's one of those complex concepts that, as you were just kind of alluding to, there's some beauty in the idea of investing in a part of any city. I actually think there's some value in investing in parts of cities where there was not a consistent pattern of previous investment. That matters a whole lot. I think ultimately the negative side of gentrification isn't the beautification. It isn't the bringing in shops. It's not even the bringing in of white people, because I am a person, like, I want to live a multi-ethnic life. So I do want my neighbors to be white. I want my neighbors to be Black, Hispanic, Asian, Native American, ... et cetera, et cetera. I think that's a beautiful thing when we can do that all together. I think the challenge of gentrification is that as the cost of living in a place increases, and there are individuals who have been stakeholders in that community while it was a fiscal desert, right? While there was a drought financially, there were key stakeholders in the community that, because we still live within a system where the outcomes are still pretty significantly impacted by race, they're not able to keep up with what's going on financially. Thus, they can't afford to live there. And so now the key stakeholders in these neighborhoods, in these urban areas, who understand the city, who understand the cultural dynamics, who understand the history, are also then removed. Well, then ultimately gentrification it becomes less of beautifying and investing in a community, and it becomes more of a turnover in community. So I think that you with me there. That makes sense though, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So I think ultimately, like, when I think about gentrification, I think about the fact that, like, gentrification actually isn't just because it doesn't start just because there's a part of a city that isn't that's poor or that is run down. Generally speaking, gentrification has its genesis in redlining, right? Yeah. Like, it goes way back into a history where there are parts of a city that literally are forgotten. They are, where Blacks and Browns are put into these parts of the city. They can't own land. They can't, actually, it's funny. We are purchasing this, the church building that we're in. We actually close on it Friday. However, in the deed, it actually has a paragraph in the deed that says that this land may not be owned by a colored person.
Wow.
Right. Like, so, right. And so, yo, bro, right. So that's still a part of many people's deeds. It's a part of what it is to redline, is not to just say that people can't live in certain places. It said they can only live in certain places and they can't own anything while they're there. So ultimately, there is this lack of investment, from the city. There's this lack of investment from the private sector, and the people there themselves don't even have the capacity to develop the equity to financially develop it themselves. So that's how it gets run down in the first place, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, and so then, 50 years later, when a bunch of woke people, right, sleepwalkers, they see like, hey, we should, like, that part of the city has been, run down for a long time. Let's go in and let's make it better. Well, your grandparents left that part of the city and abandoned it, and now you're coming back to it and ultimately still neglecting to see the breach that happened 50, 60, 100 years ago. So I think if we develop parts of the city without understanding the breach, that's when it becomes gentrification. The truth is, urban parts of the city that need development, the best way to develop them is actually investing in the people. Invest in the schools that are there. Invest in the businesses that are already there. You don't actually need to bring more businesses there. Invest in the businesses that are there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, participate with, of course, after the oh my goodness, what is it? The Federal Housing Act. There people are able to, there's no longer racial discrimination that keeps people from being able to purchase homes. But that doesn't mean that we have the long lasting generational wealth that has been passed on from equity that, from generations in the past. So if there is real investment into a community that needs to be beautified, use those funds to invest in the life that's already there. And then from that, you'll actually find that, one, it's already been thriving, and anything that you bring to it will just illuminate what's already been great about that part of the city. And you can still bring in your coffee shops, you Starbucks lovers, but as opposed to it being, a bunch of shops that wouldn't have never actually fit in there. You may have a Starbucks next to a barber shop, where you get to experience the beauty of the cultures that have been developed in that desert. So anyway, that's kind of where, that's my take on gentrification.
Yeah. And you hit on a lot of important ingredients that people, so the surface level, and I've heard this before. It's just a genuine, honest question. I've heard it from, a white person somewhat recently, and they said, it is confusing because, on one hand, you can look at like the before and after pictures of an area, pre-gentrification and post, and you might see these kind of worn down storefronts, abandoned buildings, those sorts of things, and then afterwards you see nice, you see something that's nice, and you go, well, that seems like a good thing, and we don't take into account. And so, listeners, if you don't know what redlining is, it's really important that you learn what that is. You can just Google it. It's if you read any book nowadays on racism, anti-racism, there's usually going to be a chapter in there about redlining. There's a really great video. It's about 27 minutes. I've posted it on my Facebook before. I'll see if I can find it and put it in the show notes. But it's from a documentary, a PBS documentary, and it just does a really good job explaining redlining. So I'll try to post that in the show notes.
Yeah, man.
But here's a few stats. So for today, 73% of whites own their own home. compared to 47% of Latinx or Hispanic and 42% of blacks. So 73% of whites own their own home, 42% of blacks own their own home. And there's a lot more whites in our culture than blacks, right? Whites, we're the dominant racial grouping, and blacks are one of the smallest racial groupings. So just the number of homes that are owned, it's a lot of white people owning homes, and it's not as many.
We make up 13% of the United States.
Right.
Most people don't know that. Blacks make up 13% of the United States.
And 42% of that 13% own their own homes.
Right.
And and then so renting it plays a big role in this is what I'm getting at. There's I don't want to give a blanket statement. You know, if you're a landlord listening, and I'm not saying renting is a cardinal sin, you know, but
no.
I will say this, that systematically, if you look at, you know, I mean, one of the best ways to gain wealth and equity that you can pass on to the next generation, that you can use to take out loans, you know, equity loans upon the equity that you have, is through home ownership. And many blacks, particularly in the inner city, and Latinx folks are renting. And what happens with gentrification, I was just talking to director of a large community center in the Grand Rapids neighborhood that we are hoping to plant in, and I was asking her about the what's going on in her neighborhood of the community center with gentrification, and she said, because it's one of the main gentrified areas of our city right now, and she said, yeah, when she started working at the community center about 10 years ago, there was a house across the street that was for sale for $30,000, and it was vacant for years. Somebody came in, tried to flip it. They didn't finish. They sold it to somebody else who did flip it, and that same house just sold for $175,000. So that's a huge difference in home value. If you're the home owner, you're going, yeah, baby, that's hitting the lottery. Like that's what I'm talking about. That's why I own the home. Well, it's mostly white people that own these homes. It's mostly white landlords that are getting richer off of the increased value of these homes. And then I said, are you seeing people that you minister to at your community center having to move out of the neighborhood? And she said, oh yeah, all the time. She said people's rents are changing from, $400 or $500 a month rate for some up to $1,600 a month. And so if you're paying $500 a month in rent and your rent goes up to $1,600 automatically, and you have no control over that, you literally have no way of paying your rent anymore. Now are forced out of the neighborhood. So there's all this economic boom that's happening, and by and large, it's making affluent white people more affluent, and it's displacing populations of color that have lived in this neighborhood for generations in this neighborhood, like you said, Chase, where the roots of the economic deprivation in the neighborhood started with redlining, which was legal-based laws, just like the deed that you mentioned. Our government created this neighborhood, for this purpose. So,
it's funny, right? Like you talked about how like most gentrification kind of starts off as something that is, as an initiative of the city, right? So the city kind of started this poor neighborhood, and the city is also kicking these poor people out, right? Like it's right. That's the problem of gentrification. It's not beautification. It's not business development. It's not entrepreneurship. It is the fact that really there was powerlessness that started this poor community, and there's powerlessness in gentrification too, when really we have to do a much better job of sharing power. And that is actually how you really develop a community, is to share the power that is a part of that community. So yeah.
There's I just on Google Images a picture popped up of a Latina woman. She looks like she's in her 60s or 70s, and she's holding a sign, and it says, "It says now that the neighborhood is nice, why do I have to move?" And
Right.
I remember when we talked a month ago or so, you said something similar. I can't remember your exact words, but it was about. You said it wasn't the beautification that was the issue. It was that you're not letting people of color stick around. You're not letting us be a part of it. It's like you. I can't remember how you said it, but it was this feeling of you're doing all this and you don't care. You don't care that we aren't getting to be a part of it.
So sorry, excuse me. I don't remember what I said either, but
it was beautiful.
But I can tell you what it feels like, right? So if we look through history, so you have generational abandonment, right? So you abandoned you abandoned my great grandparents when with white flight, right? You neglected my grandparents and parents in terms of not investing in the communities that you made us have to live in.
Yeah.
And now you're rejecting me by kicking me out, right? I'm not saying that, right? Like ultimately, that is the felt experience of gentrification is abandonment, neglect, and then to then culminate in rejection, when ultimately it is because of, again, ultimately just kind of repeating what I just said, but it's that continued state of powerlessness. Whereas that doesn't have to be what this is. It doesn't. Like we I think sometimes feel like what's the alternative, but there are so many other alternatives. It doesn't have to be that. So yeah. And it doesn't have to be giving people, it doesn't also have to be giving residents checks, right? Like that's not also what this is too. It doesn't mean like you just come in and use your money to paint their house. There are just other ways in which a neighborhood can be invested in that have very similar impact in terms of, again, the development, but we then just don't have to navigate abandonment, neglect, and rejection.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, as you mentioned, the other ways of development, I think when you hear a city or especially a developer talk about wanting to develop an area, maybe I'm wrong on this, but I feel like their motivation is not the development of people. Their motivation is not the development of residents. I think their motivation is profit. I think their motivation is we can make a ton of money here, and we want our city to have this sort of cool, hip image. I mean, even Grand Rapids, there's billboards up, cool city. That's the nickname. Cool city, beer city, this.
Right. Did we change our nickname?
They go together. Yeah, I mean, they get like these, and I moved here from Lansing, and like from Lansing, I would come to Grand Rapids and see the billboards. You're seeing how Grand Rapids is marketing itself. And so there's parts of the city that would be considered blight. It's an eyesore. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go in there and push the people out who are there. And then we're going to replace them with the stuff, the stuff that we've been talking about, and make it cool so that we can make more money on our city. And I think that's a different motivation than we should have as Christians, than we should have as churches, as pastors who are saying, no, there's systemic sin issues here that caused these inequities, and there's a piece of, whether it's reparations or reconciliation, conciliation, there's this piece that we did something really wrong when we built this, and there needs to be an intentional, strategic way to right those wrongs. And I don't think that necessarily is the framework that a developer is using when they go in and buy up these blocks?
So this is going to be potentially controversial, but we're family, so we can talk this way.
Well, yeah, we're already raising money to replace those Folgers K-Cups, man. I mean, we're doing it.
Right. So I think one of the real patterns of the legacy of Western culture is it is developed. It is a form of development that actually is not development. It's consumption.
Yeah.
It is to go into a place in which you have no roots and consume that which is there until you have had your fill and then leave. Right.
Yeah.
And so you make things comfortable enough in terms of Western culture. Right. This is honestly, again, when you look at even just recent human history, that has been the legacy of the British empires, is to go to a place that is not their own.
Yeah.
Consume, set up shop, make it comfortable for you to live there as long as you need to consume what is there. Then once it is no longer of value to you, to leave it. However, it is the culture of many different the pattern of many different cultures, indigenous African cultures, indigenous American cultures, indigenous Hispanic cultures, and all of those different those different parts of the world where truly, like, it is what is here and how is it that we live well within what is here.
Yeah.
That idea of right. And so, and in many ways also cultivating what there, it's not the same kind of development. And I think that's too what you lose in gentrification, is that you miss the opportunity to see how what was there was actually cultivated. What was there was matured. What was there was multiplied, because it doesn't look the way in which you desire for it to look, right? And so even when you go back to those idea of the pictures that you were talking about, right?
Yeah.
You see pictures. Well, when I see pictures of a gentrified part, I do not see that it looks good.
Oh,
it looks clean, right?
Yeah.
But clean doesn't always look good, right? There's something missing there. Where's the life, right? And so one of the things that I like I remember when it was super popular for everything in like all of the like businesses and stuff like that to be gray, like, right? So we went from it being super popular for everything to be beige in an office to everything being gray in an office.
Uh-huh.
And here's the thing, like, in terms of like white culture, that is clean. It's right. It's not like it doesn't cause a lot of, it doesn't disturb you as you walk through it. And in many ways, you can ignore it. And I think in some ways, a part of a city, sometimes with gentrification, is you want to sometimes be able to ignore what's around you to just be able to get to where you're going so you can consume where you're going. However, the life of many urban places where it has been neglected is to not just ignore what's around you. There's vibrant colors. There are murals there. Like, it's the paint on like, if you walk through a city that has that, like, an urban city, like, the paints are bright. It's beautiful when you allow, right? When you allow, for that kind of development in a space, you can't ignore the building. You can't ignore the building, because it's actually about living well within what's there. And I think that difference really does play out a lot when we think about gentrification.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it reminds me a bit of, if you think about the globalization now of white Western culture, and you can go many, many places in the world and you're going to find a McDonald's there.
Right.
And speaking of Starbucks, that is a rightful a rightful critique, right? A rightful critique is you can find a Starbucks there, and these are not culturally indigenous foods and drinks. And often, and so you're like, well, what's the problem with that? What's the problem with that? Well, I mean, the local coffee shop, the local market, and you saw this in the United States with the boom, and this all had to do with white flight as well. You had white flight, and then you had the suburbs, and everything got bigger. And so local stores, home, mom and pop shops, grocery stores, little dime stores, they all went out of business because Walmart came to town. And then, Meijer came to town, and then Home Depot and Lowe's came to town, and your little hardware store can't compete with them. And so they're all out of business. And there's a lot of macroeconomics going on there too, where the owner of the business, let's take Amazon, for example, the owner of the business is making the most money. So Jeff Bezos is a bagazillionaire because he owns the company. And you think about how many small...
It's like a hundred. What is it? Like how many billions? Somebody needs to Google that. Anyway, go ahead.
Jeff Bezos makes more money than the Flipside Patreon page. I will tell you that. He is in the lead over my Patreon page. He makes more than you.
200 billion.
And you look at that and you go, we love this idea of, capitalism in the United States. And if you even critique capitalism, if you even say, maybe there's a couple byproducts of that aren't good or aren't biblical, that aren't Christian. Here's a Bible verse from Jesus that kind of is a little different than that. You get, called a communist because we have no framework. We have no framework to even critique like these super, super deeply ingrained cultural values that we have as a white westernized culture. And it is, you make the most amount of money you can. It's a, free will market or whatever they call that. I'm not a macroeconomic person at all, but this idea that if you got the money, you build it, you can make the money. And so by all means, put a Starbucks, put a McDonald's in the middle of, Beijing, China. And if it closes down, the local person's shop, their tea shop, their coffee shop, so be it. And now that local person is working for an hourly, wage, kind of a low income wage, instead of being able to be their own business owner. And that all ties into this. It all ties into gentrification. When you see that after picture, Chase, and you say, I don't really see beauty in that. In fact, I see a lot of sameness. What I see is a stamp of sameness, and it's planted in Grand Rapids. It's planted in Chicago. It's planted in Dallas, Texas. It's planted in, you see the sameness, Mexico City. You could go to any global city and you would see sameness. And then you go, and I'll say it, that sameness is attached to white dominated businesses. And then you kind of go, so maybe those people that talk about a word that really frustrates people sometimes, white supremacy, and that's because we associate it with the KKK and the alt-right. But just when people use that word, they're not talking about those people necessarily.
No.
They're talking about this idea that it is okay to take whiteness as the supreme cultural expression and just stamp it everywhere. And so now we're getting
white
deeper.
Supremacy.
Yes. We're getting deeper into the rabbit hole now. It's like the rabbit hole is getting deeper and deeper and darker and darker.
Bro, I'm telling you, you just started like 3 whole episodes. Because that is like, those are like 3 completely different. I mean, I wouldn't say completely different. They're absolutely attached subjects, right? You don't have gentrification without hyper capitalism. And I say hyper capitalism not because it's a word, right? Like because and I'm of the belief that there is no quote unquote right and or wrong economic system. They all have inherent health and inherent unhealth, right? And the extremes are going to hyper, they're gonna make it really easy to see where they're unhealthy, right? And so and so because we have a hyper capitalism here, we get to see how incredibly challenging it is for that unhealth to be on display. So anyway, but that's a completely different episode, because that's a topic in and of itself. But without that quote unquote hyper capitalism, you don't actually gentrification wouldn't have it just wouldn't have the steam that it has, because you would be able to have other kinds of conversations, right? You'd be able to have the conversation of, well, who are we pushing out? Well, in a place where capitalism is a demigod,
Yeah.
right? We're in a place where capitalism is a demigod, then the conversation of who it's pushing out doesn't matter, because competition is a part of capitalism. So
Right.
pushing somebody out doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Right? They lost,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Somebody wins, somebody loses.
Yeah.
Well, what happens when the pattern is consistently that one group of people keeps losing?
Yeah, dude.
Right?
And
that's why it's all connected. Right?
Dude, that's such a good point you made about the competition part, right? Because we know that's part of capitalism, and it's one thing if you're having
it's not bad.
Well, look,
Just
it's one thing
unhealthy.
if you're having a battle and side A has 50 bullets and side B has 50 bullets, or if it's a sporting event and one football team has 11 guys and the other football team has 11 guys. But when you have a system, and this is why you have to read about redlining. This is why you got to read books about our racial history, and you go, whoa. Oh, I mean, I'm talking about, you can go to the FHA, the Federal Housing Administration, their manual from the 1950s and the 1960s, or here I have it. It's so this started in the 1930s, and it literally in their manual as they redline these zones, it describes a red zone as a zone with an undesirable population or an infiltration of it. Okay. That's what it in one spot talks about.
That would have been my grandparents.
Yes.
They were the undesirable population.
It says, and in that it says unstable incomes of the people, and difficult collections are usually prevalent. Well, why do you think they have unstable incomes? Because our culture, managerial racism, our culture wouldn't hire them. That you literally weren't allowed to work in a good job. So you have an unstable income. Here's another quote from the underwriting manual. This is the FHA underwriting manual. This is using what's called restrictive covenants. A restrictive covenant is likely what was on that deed for your church, that a restrictive covenant did not allow blacks into a neighborhood. So if you had a neighborhood with a restrictive covenant that literally said blacks are not allowed to live here, you got a higher positive rating from the FHA on your zone, and your zone is what allowed you to get loans. That's how you got a 30-year mortgage from the bank, because you were in a zone where the bank said, okay, we'll give you a loan. It says in the manual, restrictive covenant should enforce the, quote, prohibition of the occupancy of properties except by the race for which they are intended.
Bruh.
Like in the manual. It's in the manual.
So again, right? So here's the thing. Like, we can talk all day about the fact that ended in the 70s, right? Right? Like the equal, I can't remember. Unfortunately, my brain won't let me pull up through there, like equal and fair housing, right?
Yeah.
Or,
equal opportunity housing. We talk about that nowadays.
That one.
Yeah.
That one, right? And I think that there's value in saying that is a good thing. It is an incredibly valuable step forward in terms of racial health in our society, right? But we can't forget in that celebrating that is good, because I'm all about celebrating the fact that we made that step forward in the 70s. But we can't forget that what that meant was everyone in this space who's here now, who is a person of color, had no ability to build generational wealth.
Right.
This is 50 years ago, right? My parents my parents would have been, my parents would have been teenagers during this time, which means that they would not have been able to live in a home that their parents owned here. Right. That's what that means. Right. So, and then of course, and no generation before that would have been able to either. Right. And so like, this is this. So I know that you talked about before that there was not a, like it was one of the best ways to build wealth. Well, there was a time in America's history where it was the only way to build wealth, not just the best. It's the best way. I mean, it's probably not the best way now, right? It was the best way 50 years ago. It was the only way 200 years ago. It was the only way 100 years ago. It doesn't matter how much money you have in a bank. That's not building much, right? It was the fact that, as people were purchasing land inexpensively and seeing over a generation's time, incredible development economically. Well, that land and that property, it would increase value 200 times in a person's lifetime. Yeah. Right. You intentionally kept people out of that. Right. You intentionally kept people out of that. It wasn't a mistake, and it wasn't just because you didn't like the way they looked. You did not want them to enjoy the benefit of the only way to develop economic wealth in this system. And so now that there are other ways you're fine with letting us own land. That's a problem, right? all a part of that other episode. No.
Well, we're already there. We're already, man. This is gentrification and redlining. I love it. This is beautiful.
Gentrification, redlining, and plus, right?
Plus,
like all of the streaming services have a plus now.
Disney
right?
Plus.
So
this is gentrification plus.
This is gentrification
plus. No, honestly, I got a couple more things I want to read. I'm reading this from a document that I made. That I'm making with, there's a black lady at our church, my church plant. Yeah. She's done anti-racist workshops. She's been a trainer for decades, 20 years. She and I are creating this document together, and we're going to have it on our church website to help sort of educate people about this stuff. So that's why it's all kind of fresh in my mind. And a lot of these, we just read a book called City Within a City, which is written about Grand Rapids. It's about our city, and the subtitle is The Black Freedom Struggle in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So that's where I got some of these stats from. So let me read a couple more, and then we'll wrap up here in a minute. So it says, in Grand Rapids, the area description forms of the Homeowner Loan Corporation cited A areas, so A would be the best zoned area, as well as, quote, restricted communities. These were communities whose inhabitants were, now listen to the exact wording from the FHA this is the Homeowner Loan Corporation. This is where you're getting your money to buy your home, to get your home, whose inhabitants were, quote, native white, comma, white collared, with a Z. Check this out.
Sorry.
If that wasn't enough.
Wait, what is a native white person? Like, I don't even,
that's a whole nother.
That doesn't even make sense.
Dude, there's a whole. So if you want to go there's Supreme Court cases.
Go ahead.
No, there's Supreme Court. Because listen, what people don't understand is there was such a legal advantage to being white. I mean, such a financial advantage to being white. You could literally get a home loan on a sweet home in one of these A neighborhoods just because you're white. So you had, there's famous Supreme Court cases. There's a Japanese man, and there was also an Armenian man. So from Armenia, the country, and they, during the same time, I don't remember what if it was the mid 1900s or early 1900s, they independently in different cases they went to the Supreme Court arguing that they were white because the Japanese dude's like, look at my skin, it's really white, and the Armenian guy said the same thing. They both were denied.
Yep.
One of them was denied because the court said scientifically you're not white, even though the guy visibly was white. So the other guy's case was, no, here's the scientific proof. I'm white. Look at it scientifically. And they said, you're not white enough. Like, you don't look white enough. So anyway, my point is, people don't realize that there were literally people jockeying legally to be considered white. So what white was, it was a construct made by white lawmakers. Okay, so let me finish reading this. All right, native white collared, with this is all in the homeowner loaner corporation thing, with a zero Negro population. That's how you got to be an A-ranked community. Zero Negro population. And then it says, Ottawa Hills, one of our neighborhoods, it was rated an A section and dubbed the best residential area within the city limits because it remained highly restrictive and devoid of Negroes. And it only took a 1% black occupancy for a neighborhood to receive a D rating. So as soon as one black person, family...
1%. 1%.
Yeah, 1% of your neighborhood turns black. Your neighborhood goes from the highest rated neighborhood to get all of these home loans, which is making the value of the home skyrocket, to a D rating, boom, which is redlined, and the value of your homes is plummeting. There was another stat. Homes in the
redlining.
In the green zone area today, they gained $220,000 in equity. So homes in a green lined area, $220,000 they gained of profit of just equity versus a home in a red line area. So Chase, your grandparents, if they would have bought a home, some blacks were able to buy homes back then, but it would have 100% been in a red line area. So a friend of mine from Detroit, he just told me in a recent conversation, he said, my grandma, he's our age, he said, my grandma bought a house for $10,000 back in the 50s. She just sold it today in 2021 for $15,000. So her home gained $5,000 in equity in 70 years. If that home was in a green-lined area, the stats say it would have gained $220,000. So anyway, all this back to your point about competition, and you go, okay, it is competition in capitalism, but it's not an even playing field. One of the football teams has 11 players. The other football team has 3 players. Which football team do you think has the advantage when it goes to setting up business on the strip of your city, etc.?
Right.
That's it. I'm done.
Yes. So the challenge of gentrification, back to that, isn't the fact that you made the area look good. The challenge of gentrification is all of that history, all of that oppression, all of that discrimination, all of that neglect, all of that abandonment. If you don't acknowledge that breach when you come back to what you left or what you did, what you deemed devalued, what you deemed unworthy before, and said that, well, we'll just give you these scraps. Once you come back and say you want to, and I say you come back as in a people group and as a city saying that this is important now. We want it now, right? We want it now. You want it, but still want nothing to do with me.
There it is.
Right? You want it. You want it, but you still want nothing to do with me, because now you can't legally put on a piece of paper that I'm not welcome here, but you can change the prices that make it so that I can't be here anymore because of all the other issues that are connected to the outcomes connected to race. I can't afford it anymore. Right. And so that's the real problem of gentrification, is it says it consistently communicates you are not valuable. You are not valuable. And that's why you need an hour plus conversation to talk about it. You can't just talk about you can't just you can't talk about gentrification in 15 minutes.
Yeah,
it's such a big conversation.
Yeah. Well, we'll start to wrap this up for today's episode, and I will kind of, my closing thoughts will be, most of my audience is white, most of my listeners are white, and I have close friends and family, listening, and I always think we have to approach these topics as Christians. For me, as I talk about it,
Yeah.
I want listeners to know I don't talk about this stuff with that sort of that snooty wokeness that you see a lot of times today, which to me goes along with cancel culture. This idea that if you're not with us, you're against us. If you're and I think as Christians we have to. We're filled with the fruits of the Spirit, and just know, listeners, particularly if you're white, Chase and I talk about these things from a point of passion because we believe it's biblical. We believe that God cares about justice, and He cares about
absolutely
the oppressed and the marginalized. But there are wide on ramps. I want listeners to know that I welcome you into a learning community. So this is just about, it's about learning. It's about humility. It's about going, okay, there's a history here that I really wasn't taught. I didn't really know about. And whether you're 20 years old listening, or you're 70 years old listening, or you're anywhere in between, I just want to give you grace to be where you are. To be where you are, I give you grace.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I know that you just didn't learn this stuff in school. I didn't learn this stuff.
Jinx.
But a lot of people of color live this, and so they have lived it and seen it. Whereas I talked to a guy just Sunday, and he's interested in our church and our church launch team, and I thought it was really insightful. He said, I grew up in a small town, a small country town. Everybody was white. And I never knew inequality was a problem because I looked around my town and everything was equal. And he said, then I moved to Grand Rapids. I moved to Grand Rapids for college, and it was the first time I saw inequity, and it struck me how color-based it was. And then I realized, oh, there's something else going on here. And so I just share that to say, I welcome your feedback. Feel free to email the show, podcast@beyondthebattle.net, if there's things you want to learn more about and talk more about. But I do, as a pastor and as someone who loves you, I invite you to have an open heart and an open mind. And I invite you to go down the rabbit hole. Honestly, to me, if I'm a Matrix nerd, the movie, particularly the first movie, and this is like unplugging from the Matrix. It's and I know not everybody follows that metaphor, and that's okay. But it's like going, oh, this construct that was built for me isn't actually what's real. What's real are these laws, these things that we're talking about. What's real is the experience that people of color have had in our cities, and Jesus cares. I mean, God cares about this stuff, and so there's a wave. There's a wave. God is moving. He's moving in our culture. He's moving in the church, and I want to ride that wave. And I just would invite my listeners as well to get their surfboard out. And it's a little scary. It's a lot scary, and to ride that wave as well. And we'll keep going. Let's just keep taking another step, and I'd love to see where it goes from here. So those are my final thoughts. What about you, Chase?
Yeah, I think I'm in line with your final thoughts, for those who don't follow the Matrix thing as well. I think our natural reaction when we are presented with a reality that is not our own is to reject it. That is our natural response, is to say, oh, that can't be real because that's not what I know to be real. Unless someone explicitly says it's fantasy, right? Someone explicitly tells you this is fantasy. Well, then we embrace it for the fun of it. But I think to be real people, to be real, to be fully human, we have to embrace the fact that there are multiple perspectives to a shared reality.
There you go.
Right? And so there's only one reality, but our perspective tends to be our personal reality. It is when we allow our realities, our perspectives where we find the connective tissue between our perspective and another person's perspective and another person's perspective, that we begin to see reality in all of its beautiful facets. It becomes 3D as opposed to 2D, right? And I think so the beauty of these kinds of conversations, especially as we're newer to them, isn't that I'm going to lose myself, right? Like that's not the danger here. The beauty is I can maintain the perspective that I've been blessed with, while allowing myself to actually, my reality to be broadened. And it doesn't mean that what I've lived is quote unquote a lie. It simply means that it is a shallow version of a deeper truth. And the more I know, and the more I allow myself to be vulnerable, and the more humble I come to these kinds of things, the better off I am long term for it. And the better I'm able to love my neighbor as a result, right? So,
boom.
That's my final thought.
Boom. All right, so I apologize. My producer got the sound effect going a little early. This alarm, Chase, is it's a warning. It's a warning to listeners that if they tuned in to learn things, if they are mature listeners, if they are well-rounded people, if they care about spiritual growth and all of the richness that we discuss, this is the time of the episode for them to turn off the podcast. So this is a warning.
This is
everything from this point on, everything, Noah's Rant is coming, and everything from this point on is complete and utter stupidity, really.
So am I supposed to stay on this? This is my first episode.
I've thought about this. I prayed about it. I fasted for a long time, like in between my breakfast and my snack. I fasted about this.
Yes.
And the Lord really spoke to me that said, you cannot be on this call while I do Noah's Rant, because Noah's Rant is like a cage. It's the octagon. I go into the cage. I become a different person. I become an animal, and I don't want you to get hurt. I love you. Okay. I care about you.
Good.
I don't want you to get hurt.
Because look, I don't know that I want to see that side of you yet. I know we've gotten to know each other really well, but I'm not ready for that yet.
I don't want you to see that side of me. I don't want anybody to see that side.
We might have to go camping first before I can see that side.
Black people do not like camping. I will say that.
Hey, you know what? Most of us don't. But there's a good few of us that do. But most
we can start a new trend.
When I say camping, I mean like basically at a hotel.
Like a hotel.
Right?
Yeah,
like we have to have to go to a conference. We have to go to a conference together.
Exactly.
And we have to
I knew what you meant. I was able to do that.
That's what I mean by camping.
That's what I mean by camping. That code switching we talked about, I could do that. But I got to translate. I'm translating for my audience here. So, I don't want anybody to see me in the Noah's Rant cage. You know, it really is. We'll talk about this next time. But we didn't even talk about your record company and what you're doing with music. And everything.
Yeah.
So
we can talk about that.
I think it would be like that if you are recording a song. You don't necessarily want me in the room. I mean,
no.
There's something intimate about that. Well, that's me and Noah's Rant. It's my song. It's my song. It's
your song.
It is
all right. Well, sing on, brother.
It is a harsh, painful song, but it is my song that the Lord has given me.
Yeah.
So hey,
and today that rant is about. You said it earlier. It wasn't Folgers.
Leading in. Normally I don't give a lead in, but
okay. No. All right, you do what you normally do. I'm gonna get off.
We're gonna leave that as a teaser for
Oh my gosh.
the one and only. And before I intro, Chase will be back. So Chase, thank you so much for being with us today. Again, our studio audience is just in love with you. They are just going wild for you and being with us today.
Thank you.
So
This was fun.
I forgot to mention earlier, but listeners, if they want to support the podcast financially, they can do that at patreon.com/Noah Filipiak. And here's the thing. If I ever make enough on Patreon, so if I ever make more than I spend on this podcast, so right now I spend more than I make on the podcast, but if I ever make more than I spend, I can definitely see a world where my co-host will get a cut of that Patreon honorarium bonus. And so,
Come
listeners,
on, flip side. All right,
let's step up. Let's represent for Chase. Flipopotomi. Patreon.com/Noah Filipiak. And that is how you get yourself a Flipopotamus mug, by the way. I forgot to mention that earlier. We have a whole lineup of swag to choose from as a reward, as a bonus. And Chase, I will hook you up with a Flipopotamus mug today. I will ship it to you because I love you and I want you to have one for next time. Even if you just have water in it, it will be.
It'll be tea. I like herbal tea.
Herbal tea is
in the
good.
morning.
Herbal tea is good. So without further ado, you've been warned. Turn the podcast off now. Do not send me your emails that you hate Noah's rant, because I told you to stop listening now. It is time for the one, the only Noah's rant.
Noah's rant.
All right, Flipopotomi. It is time to make the world a better place. As I mentioned in the show intro, today we are talking about one of the greatest atrocities in our culture. I know as Chase and I were talking about gentrification and redlining and racial injustice, you as a listener were thinking, yeah, but when are you going to talk about the worst travails of our society? When are you finally going to get to talking about Capri Sun juice boxes? Let's be honest. A Capri Sun juice box, first of all, isn't even a box. What do you call that thing? What do you call that Capri Sun juice pouch? Hey, Mom and Dad, could I have a juice pouch? A what? Who taught you that? What are they teaching you in school? A juice pouch? Look, Capri Sun. Look, let me just talk to you, Flipside audience, for a moment. I am a dad. I am a dad of 3 daughters. My children's ages are 4, 8, and 9, almost 10. 2 of my daughters play soccer. 2 of my daughters just finished up playing softball. I would go as far as to say the highlight of playing softball or soccer is the snack that you receive at the end of your game. In fact, my 4-year-old just started playing soccer this fall. So cute, so adorable. At age 4, they do not have games. But don't tell her that, because we go to her soccer game every Tuesday night, according to her. And soccer game is her and her 9 little friends on her team, all on the same team, and they do some drills with the coach. And I think by the end of the year, they're going to scrimmage each other 3-on-3, which will be awesome. But it is her game. And let me tell you what, they start them out right in this league. They get a snack after every quote-unquote game, which is really a glorified gym class with her own team. And she loves getting that snack because her sisters get a snack at the end of their soccer or softball game. When it is our turn as parents to buy said snack, we include a Capri Sun as the beverage in those snack bags. So let's start. So in essence to say, I have bought many Capri Sun. I am a Capri Sun expert. I could buy stock in Capri Sun with the amount of Capri Sun I have bought for softball and soccer teams. Now, here on the flip side, we love nature. We love the earth. We love God's creation. We love recycling. The flip side tells you, flip-eponymai, do not litter. And this is where we begin with a Capri Sun pouch. First and foremost, there is a straw attached to every Capri Sun pouch. The straw is covered with a very thin, very see-through piece of plastic. You begin your episode in looking like a fool by trying to get the straw out of the plastic. You cannot get the straw out of the plastic. And then you realize, oh, look, some genius engineer crafted the straw on one end in the shape of a knife, in the shape of a shim that somebody would make in jail to stab another prisoner. Beautiful idea. Let's use the sharp edge of the straw to open from the said thin plastic wrapper. Now, sometimes the plastic wrapper sticks onto the pouch. Most of the time, it does not. And where does the wrapper go? You certainly don't hang on to it. It blows away in the wind. It is see-through and invisible. And if you trusted your 5 or 8 or 9-year-old to open it, you can guarantee that wrapper is now firmly embedded in the grass somewhere where no one will ever find it except for a cute baby bunny who will hop along and eat the plastic and die. Thank you, Capri Sun, for killing baby bunnies. I want to know how many million straw wrappers from Capri Sun are littering our beautiful earth today, only to be devoured by cute baby bunnies in the near future, bringing them to their utter death and ruin. Once you have successfully removed the sharp bludgeon stick from the wrapper that is killing the earth, you now have to figure out, how do I get said straw into said pouch? The episode in Looking Like a Fool continues. You poke the little foil, what should be a hole. You cannot get the straw into the aluminum foil hole. The sharp end, you think, oh, perfect. This is perfect to poke a hole in Capri Sun so my child may consume said beverage. But you cannot figure out the angle to put the straw into the pouch. So you poke and you poke and you poke to no avail. Now, you've had a little too much angry brew to drink. You're a little bit jumpy. You start to get a little bit angry. No judgment here. In your anger, you say, I am going to get this straw into this pouch so my child can consume this juice beverage. So, you take the sharp-ended stick, the shim, the bludgeon, the murder weapon, and you force it as hard as you can into that hole. And what happens? It goes through the hole and out the other end of the pouch. Now you have 2 holes. Congratulations. If you somehow were successful in managing to get the straw into the solitary hole where it is designed to go, now you give the said juice pouch to your child, your 4-year-old child, which As soon as he or she put their cute little adorable hands on the juice, what do but grab a hold of the pouch? As soon as you grab a hold of a Capri Sun pouch, the Capri Sun shoots like a volcanic eruption up the straw and onto your face. Exactly as the Capri Sun engineers designed it to happen. So, here's the deal, Capri Sun. Change your product wrapping. We are here to make the world a better place. Don't even get me started while I'm at it on Go-Gurts. Go-Gurt. Who eats Go-Gurt? Children eat Go-Gurt. A Go-Gurt is a tube of yogurt. It is a tube of yogurt for children. So you would think that a tube of yogurt for children would be easy to open. But no, of course not, because they are designed by the same people that design Capri Sun, who are demented sociopaths who love the suffering of humanity. So a Go-Gurt has a little easy to open slit at the top. It even says on the package, hey, easy to open slit. I don't think it uses the word slit. I'm not even sure that that's a word. But you get the idea. And you say, wonderful, easy to open. You give it to your child. They either cannot open it, and they hand it to you, or as soon as they open it, the yogurt spews forth from the spout like the old faithful geyser at Yellowstone National Park. I think that's where it is. Nothing I say during Noah's rant can be used against me as true. So, you peel off the top of the yogurt for your child. You now get Go-Gurt spewing all over you, and the top of the Go-Gurt does not come off. So it opens up like a hinge, and there is no way to actually pull the rest of it off without getting Go-Gurt all over you. So you go and you get scissors and you cut the rest of it off, and now you have Go-Gurt on your scissors. The world, Flip-A-Ponemi, it's a dark place. It's a dark place filled with sociopaths like those that design the Go-Gurt container and the Capri Sun pouch. But never fear. Noah's Rant is here to make the world a better place. Noah's Rant is your superhero, is your knight in shining armor coming in knowing that the CEO of the Go-Gurt company and the Capri Sun company are listening. They are big listeners, and now they know to change the design of their product so that a human being is able to open and consume and enjoy a portable yogurt or juice beverage without having to bathe or shower in said portable yogurt or juice beverage. And with that, we conclude episode 55 of the Flipside Podcast. We thank you so much for listening. I told you not to listen to Noah's Rant. I told you it wouldn't be any good, but you wouldn't listen. You had to defy me and listen to it anyway. Don't blame me. Blame yourself. I look forward to next episode. Chase will be with us again. Email the show if you have any questions. I will see you next time on The Flip Side.
The Flip Side with Noah Filipiak is a South Francis Press production. Copyright Noah Filipiak. www.noahfilipiak.com. Theme music by Kyle Lake at K-Lake Music. Used with permission. Please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes or wherever podcasts are found.
Souls needing revivals, what do I do? Influence like the cup full of that Bombay. Kelly to them Tom Hanks, Lexus to them Andres. Hoping they can't get my inner reverence, stressing for leverage. That they see the king's tracks on the pavement leading to heaven. Yo, dripping in that gold that don't perish. People selling fake, see the green around their belly. Taking refuge in his hand, see his palms, my living quarters. Close them when I'm finished, it's time to bring me closer. There's no purgatory, cause you in or you're out. When you see him in the clouds, then you know it's going down. Raise them. They've been sleeping for some ages. Now all God's babies so confused by this hatred. Pulpit preachers shouldn't aim to be A-list. Money probably long, but short is with your days. Have you ever heard the sound of freedom? Have you ever heard the sound of freedom? Have you ever heard the sound of freedom? Tripping upon the premise, see lyrics painting the image, pointing to redemption to the one who got them splinters. Cause that cross is nothing pretty. So why the beauty pageants and caught up in emotions and following your passions? Talking that freedom, our people need them more than the Easter or coffee shop discussions debating over baristas. Please, sir, this is why we inked up. Even when they do the autopsy, they still see him. Freedom coming quickly. Bars from the spirit. Put it through the preamp and mix it like a chemist. Put it in the airwaves and hoping that they hear it. If there's some confusion, then I hope you see him clearly. Raise them. They've been sleeping for some ages. Now all God's babies so confused by this hatred. Pulpit preachers shouldn't aim to be A-list. Money probably long, but short is with your days.